So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's been a little bit of a break, but we are back with Genomics Gupshup, and this is the 13th episode of Genomics Gupshup. And I'm very excited because we are going international now. We've just have our first international guest, and that too from Canada. And she's someone that we truly admire and truly love, and she's been on our board of advisors as well. We want to welcome Dr. Shabnam Daskar. She has many accolades to her name. She's a specialist in functional medicine, and we'll talk about what functional medicine is and all of that. And she's also director of the medical education at Better Medical Center in Calgary in Canada. She's an MD in obstetrics and gynecology. She's a fellow of American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, brain health professional certification from Amen Clinics, clinicians training, Tiny Habits certified coach, and many other things. So she has many different things that we can talk about, and I think we will see where this conversation goes. This is Gupshup, so we will try to keep it as light and as easy to understand as possible. So welcome to Genomics Gupshup, Dr. Shabnam. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Anu. That was like a really glowing introduction, and I was wondering whether it was somebody else. But thank you, and I'm happy. I'm on the 13th episode. So my mother used to think 13 is very lucky.
Yes, so it is lucky. I think for us, yes.
It's a great honor and privilege to be here talking with you on the Gupshup. And I mean, we were just before you started recording, we were talking about how many years we first connected the first time. And that was when I got to know of, your company. This was on Quora many years ago.
I think you never know where we first, where our first interaction starts and where we go. So it has been, I think, a long time since we've been in touch. Your inputs have been absolutely phenomenal, and I wanted to actually maybe go through this journey because you've gone a very unusual path, right? You're a medical doctor. You were one of the earliest to get into functional medicine. So I wanted to ask, what really prompted you to become a doctor? Were there lots of doctors in your family, or was it something that got you excited? What was it actually?
Oh my God. No, it wasn't something very fancy or very well calculated decision. So and I'm middle-aged. So back when we were making, career decisions, it was either you went into engineering because you liked physics and mathematics. And if you didn't like those, you liked biology. And back then, little did I know that biology does not have a lot of, commonality with medicine, but so you like biology, then you go into medicine. So it was as simple as that. And if you didn't like either of that, then you had to think, okay, maybe MBA or chartered accountancy or IAS. So it was not a well-calculated decision, but the fact is, today I'm more excited about medicine than I was back so many years ago. So for a long time, I was practicing as an OBGY in Mumbai. And though that was very fulfilling, and as you know, I mean, you are a mother, so you know that OBGY is one of those fields where, it's like most of the time it's a happy world. It's like we are taking part in something that nature is doing very well anyway. But what happened is many years ago, this was a long time ago, first time I heard a doctor from America, he was speaking at an event in Mumbai. So he was talking about bioidentical hormones. Now, as an OBGY, I was like shocked to know that I didn't know what bioidentical hormones were. So that piqued my interest initially. And then he was a part of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. So he talked about, they have a fellowship. And so over the years, I said, okay, let me do the fellowship. So that was when I did the fellowship from the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And this was online mostly. Then I attended some events at Dubai where they had live events. And so that is where the journey started. Now, in terms of, genomics and genetics and all the things that, that are fairly new, these are not things we learned in medical college. So I still remember many years ago when I first used to go for these A4M seminars. And one of the first terms would be, they talk about, oh, we have this SNP, and I used to think it is SNIP until
Yes.
slide would be projected, and it's like SNP, and the fellowship professors would say, oh, people may have a SNP in this particular genetic pathway. And I'm like, what is this? I don't know. So that was when I decided, okay, I cannot remain ignorant. So maybe, Anu, do you want me to mention what a SNP is? But I think most of
Yeah,
our
absolutely. No, I mean, it'll be
Okay.
nice to see what, because, it's for a lot of people, even today, I think you're right. I mean, from genomics background, all of us talk sometimes we are talking about SNPs and exomes and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think unless the average person understands, and I think coming from a medical doctor, I think that will be very helpful if you can explain in simple terms what an
Okay, thank you, Anu. Now, to explain something in simple terms, one needs a PhD level knowledge. I don't have that, but I will try. So basically, when we think of genes, so genes are all these wonderful genetic material that we inherit. Genes are they are kind of in a way, they are the sequence, the exact way in which the genes are made. They are they are permanent. So there are these genetic diseases, and there are other conditions which are not genetic, where the SNPs come in. So genetic conditions are like, for example, Down syndrome. So Down syndrome is a variation in one particular gene. It's called a trisomy 21. Similarly, there are other genetic conditions like Huntington's and all that. Now, those are such that once someone inherits that, and again, depends on whether it's one copy or two copies from mother and father. Another one is thalassemia. So thalassemia trait versus actually getting thalassemia from both parents. Those are, back in the days, we used to say they are permanent. They cannot be treated. But again, I'm not going into CRISPR now, but it is very hopeful that, we are very excited that these genetic diseases are finally probably going to be treated. But I'm not going there. Yeah. What is more common is what are called, minor variations in the sort of typo errors. So let us say we know that, going back to school of, how the DNA is made, they are the sequences of, ACTG. So if instead of ACTG, it has become ACGT. So that is like a typo in the genetic material. So this is not a permanent, this is not what shall I say? It's not a genetic defect like a Down syndrome or a Huntington's, but it is basically like a typo. So what happens, one example would be, let us say someone has this variation. So that is called a single nucleotide polymorphism. So SNP is the abbreviation, and we usually refer to it as a SNP, and it is not an SNIP. So yeah. These variations make the differences between one person and another. Now, years ago, when the Human Genome Project came up, so what happened is we thought, okay, once we have the entire genome sequenced, and back then it was very expensive. So Anu, do you remember how much, was it $1 billion they took?
True. So it was in the beginning, did cost a few billion, then it went to, in 2011, I remember, even as late as 2011, I think the cost of a whole genome was about $100,000. And now
today, I think it's about $1,000 or so.
Yeah, or lesser.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and we are like, we hear conversations about $100 genome sequencing. So which is like
coming soon is what they're.
Yeah, 5,000 to 6,000 rupees equivalent, I think, in Indian terms. So from $1 billion to that is like huge progress. Now, what ended up happening is also in the not so much in the clinical medicine world, but in the rest of the biology world, there's a lot of excitement that we're going to have the genome sequence and we're going to conquer all the major diseases in the world. Like there's going to be no heart disease, no dementia, none of that.
Everything will be fine. Utopia.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. So what happened is, what was actually, you can explain that way better than me. What was found is that there was a lot of genetic material, which back then, unfortunately, was called junk DNA. Because we didn't know what was going on with that. So we just dismissed them off as junk. Now we realize this is like over the years, there's so much research that has been done that the junk DNA is not really junk. It is what is deciding so much of what happens in our health. So going from that, now what happens is most of the diseases, like whether we talk about heart disease, diabetes, dementias like Alzheimer's, mood disorders, most of these are what are called polygenic diseases. So it is not one single gene that is going to have a huge impact on a person's risk for, let us say, heart attacks, but it is several different genes with small little variations which sort of add up. So that is what, we talk about and because it's a polygenic risk, so it's not enough for you to know just one gene, like, and you can explain that very well when you do a assessment. Like I know that there are some people who will just look at a few of the genes, not all the genes, because again, doing all of them costs more money. So it's like, but then what if the person had a variation in one of the other ones that were not tested? So one of the common ones that comes up is the MTHFR, so methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme. And the MTHFR gene has a huge impact on mood disorders. It is also one of the factors which leads to higher homocysteine levels. So high homocysteine is a risk factor for heart disease, mood disorders, dementia, a whole bunch of stuff. And in India, actually, high homocysteine is very common. One of the reasons is, of course, MTHFR is there, but the other big one is B vitamin deficiencies. So B12 deficiency is very common amongst people who are vegetarians, predominantly if they don't add supplementation. So high homocysteine can be because of a nutritional problem, or it could also be because of a genetic variation in MTHFR. But Anu, what really excites me is the field of epigenetics. Mm-hmm. So epigenetics is basically, the way a gene is expressed or not expressed. Now, I'm going to try to explain it simply, because initially when I used to hear these, at my A4M lectures, I was thinking like, oh, this is like way over my head. Then I'd spend, hours on YouTube videos looking at Khan Academy videos to understand a lot of the what is epigenetics. Yeah. So basically, what is epigenetics? Now, every cell in our bodies have the same genetic information. So, but why does it happen that, for example, in the eye, we don't have hair growing inside the eyes? So how do the eye cells know that they should not express the hair growing, genes, whereas the skin cells, they are not expressing, the eye like vision cells there. So that is basically epigenetics. How does the body decide on that? While that is at a different level, what is more exciting is a lot of these epigenetic processes. So epi meaning above the gene. Epigenetic processes are decided by our lifestyle. So what we eat, when we eat, and more importantly, when we don't eat, and how much we move, and how much of toxic exposure, atmospheric pollution we are exposed to, how well we sleep, all those factors, then therapeutic supplementation, all those factors decide our epigenetics. So my point is, let us say, I'm just giving an example. A person has a family history of heart disease. His father had a heart attack at the age of 45. Mother has hypertension. And there is diabetes in practically everybody in the family. That's a very typical South Asian family history. So does it mean that if this is the family history of someone, that you are kind of like destined to have all those diseases? No. So that is the most important message I want to give. So first, yes, it is important to know your genetic information if you're interested. Not everybody is interested. I was asked recently about, the ApoE4 gene in dementia. Some people say, I don't want to know because I don't want to do anything about it. I want to live my life the way I'm living now. I want to eat what I want to eat. I want to drink what I want to drink. So I don't want to know. So, but if you are someone who wants to know, and more importantly, wants to do something about it, yes, definitely that additional information is going to make a big difference to you. So I'm going to pause there, Anu, and if you have any questions.
No, not at all. I think this is exactly like what what we have been also talking about, right? I mean, a lot of times, sometimes we get customers who say, okay, if I find out that I have something in my genetics or in my genome, does it mean that I will get it, right? So for instance, we find out that you are at risk for type 2 diabetes or at risk for something.
Yeah.
And we tell people that this is just one risk factor, right? I mean, there are many other risk factors that go along with it. And I think sometimes it might modify your, it's basically what will change how your genes are expressing that really makes a difference. And that's why there is so much that you can do with your own lifestyle and as a result, see that change in your in terms of how you yourself have expressed that disease or not. So for instance, I think when you describe the average Indian family, I think that's my family also, right?
Oh,
but I mean, my dad had diabetes at the age of 40. My mom got it later, but 60 something. But she had hypertension and all of that. And I think when I look at my genetics or genomics, also, I think I definitely inherited a lot of that. But I'm 50, and clearly I am perfectly fine so far, whether it is when it comes to diabetes or hypertension or anything else. And I think part of that is the fact that I'm aware, I'm self-aware that you can make a difference. And I think that's why this whole understanding of genomes is one part of it. Understanding what your other things can do is another part, right? What your epigenetics can do. And all of that comes by, I think, ultimately is by being aware of how these risk factors play a role in your genome. So I think that's all. It's amazing that you're actually using that to help people to make those changes. I saw that you do a lot of work on intermittent fasting. That's another thing I've been also practicing.
Okay.
So it is. I think it's fabulous, and maybe it will be helpful to. I know we are talking about genomics, but be helpful to see how intermittent fasting, maybe results in some sort of changes in our epigenome.
Thank you. So before I talk about intermittent fasting, Anu, one thing I would say about you, number one, you don't look 50. So congratulations on joining the 50 plus club. The next thing is, it's not just your awareness. See, I know you are very physically active. So, and you eat healthy. So it's not enough to have the awareness. More importantly is, what are you doing about it?
True. I should have mentioned that. Yes.
No, that is you. Yeah. That has become so much a part of your life that you probably don't even think of it every all the time. So it is important to not just know, because knowledge alone has never pushed anyone into taking action. And as a certified tiny habits coach, so Dr. BJ Fogg is the behavior design head of the behavior design lab at Stanford. So what he says is, we have this information action fallacy. We feel that if we give people the information, they're automatically going to take action. That does not happen. And that is the way in medicine we've been doing for years and years. So even now, as a functional medicine doctor, I used to think, okay, now instead of writing a prescription for a pill, I'm going to tell them about sleeping better. But that does not work the same way. So again, the information action fallacy part of it. So most importantly is to break it down into what are the things you want to do. Mm-hmm. So that is the action part of it. So talking about intermittent fasting. So basically a few definitions first. So intermittent fasting is also called time restricted eating. And so any eating interval, so the whole day is divided into, we eat for a certain number of hours and we don't eat or drink for a certain number of hours. So there is a eating window and there is a fasting window. And traditionally, if we look back to even our childhood, we didn't eat all the time because one of the reasons was that readily available food was not there. Like we didn't have snacks available in, nice plastic bags. We just, order on the phone or you buy from the neighborhood little shop. Someone had to actually cook and prepare. And we didn't have that custom of eating, 3 meals and 3 snacks every day. From that, we have beautifully transitioned now into eating all the time. And this was very interesting research from Dr. Sachin Panda, who's a very well-known researcher in the field of the circadian rhythm. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a few of his research papers they were done in India. So what he found is, and I know many people who are listening, if you're not doing intermittent fasting, you're thinking, I don't eat, for so many hours in a day. I would just suggest just track it for one day. So
Absolutely.
in his study, he found, and this is what he says, that your mouth is open as long as your eyes are open. So people were eating for like 12 to 15 hours a day. So eating would also include the milk tea, because milk tea is very popular in India. So that is not a fasting fluid. So instead of drinking for so many hours, if we were to reduce it to at least a basic level of 12 hours of overnight fast. So the easiest way to do that is have an early dinner. So if you can finish your dinner early by 7:30. I know for some people in India, it's a big challenge, but that is one of the best strategies, health strategies, I would say, because it's one thing is it's not only related to, getting good sleep, because if you eat nearer to bedtime, you're not going to get good sleep. If you don't get good sleep, your blood glucose levels are going to rise. You're not going to feel very excited to exercise in the morning. That impacts your sleep again. So it's like a vicious cycle. But what is interesting is a lot of studies have shown that our insulin sensitivity, that means basically how our body processes carbohydrate containing food. And in India, people by default, particularly people who are vegetarians, end up eating more carbohydrates, a lot of grains. So that carbohydrate processing ability is less in the second half of the day versus in the first half of the day. So that is another, strategy to reduce blood glucose levels and inflammation as well. So intermittent fasting, basic of 12 hours overnight fast, most people need to extend that to 14 hours to 16 hours. So 16 hours of fasting, like for some people, it's like, how can I do without having food for 16 hours? Once you start building your fasting muscles, it is easier to do that. So don't start on a 16 hours overnight fast, like as the first thing you do. Slowly, you can build your fasting muscles, is what we say. So first you start with lower carbohydrate food, eat more protein. Most people don't eat enough protein. And basically a 16-hour fast is just not eating breakfast in the morning. That's all. Just you're having the first meal of your day as a brunch. So that is, and there are lots of studies now on intermittent fasting, and even some people may need longer fasts. And fasting is something that is there in practically every religion in the world. But now it is going through a lot of scientific research. And a lot of the research is particularly, in a country like India, where diabetes is so common, using TRE, time restricted eating, and not eating late in the evening are two of the commonest strategies that my patients find those very easy to incorporate. I'm sure, Anu, in amongst people, there's so many who are already doing that.
Absolutely. I think
And
now, I think people are finding it. But some people try to do what you just mentioned, which was like, don't immediately go to 16-hour fast. Some people do it just because they want to lose a lot of weight. But I think we have to build, like you mentioned, sustainable habits over a period of time.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, actually, we can go down many rabbit holes when it comes to intermittent fasting. And what it does biochemically in the body is basically it puts a person into a state of nutritional ketosis. Now, Anu, do you want me to go down that path, or shall we?
Yeah, we can. It's Gupshup. We can go anywhere we want. Yeah.
So nutritional ketosis is basically ketones. Our bodies use different types of fuels. Glucose is one kind of fuel. Ketones is another kind of fuel. And ketones are actually considered to be a much cleaner fuel. So cleaner as in like a gasoline using car versus an electric car or a hybrid car. Hybrid car is cleaner. Well, okay. Tesla. So have Teslas been launched in India yet?
I'm not sure. I know that there are a lot of people bought that thing, but I haven't seen that much on the road. But clearly, I just came back from California, so I've seen many Teslas.
So yes, so using and considering the price of gasoline going up, it's like it's becoming, and a lot more companies are coming up with that. So going to the cleaner fuel. So what studies have shown is, and this is a lot of new research, a failing heart. So someone with heart failure, and heart failure is fairly common and doesn't have a whole lot of good treatment. So heart failure, so a failing heart is better at using ketones. A failing brain, so Alzheimer's, dementia. So Alzheimer's is one of the dementias, but dementia is something that is becoming like an epidemic in India. And unfortunately, in countries like India, the lower and medium income countries, dementia is going to become a much bigger problem. In first world countries, it is kind of stabilizing now.
Mm.
So a failing heart, a failing brain, a failing liver, so fatty liver, all these organs, they function much better on ketones. So how will ketones come in the body? One is eating a very low carbohydrate diet. So low carbohydrate as in, so where do carbohydrates come from? Your rice, your pasta, dosa, idli, roti, and naan and all those, and of course the pizzas and the breads and all those things.
Awesome.
And how low should one go to achieve nutritional ketosis? It is different for different people. For a lot of people of South Asian ancestry, it could be as low as 20 grams of carbs a day. And 20 grams of carbs is one apple. So getting into nutritional ketosis using only food is sometimes a bit of a challenge for a lot of people, particularly if they're vegetarians, because most vegetarian food come with a lot of carbohydrates. Like you look at lentils or beans, those are some of the go-to for a lot of people. They think they're getting a lot of protein from that, but they're also getting a lot of carbohydrates. So one is eating very low carbohydrate diet or a ketogenic diet. The next is, which is what a lot of my patients find exciting, is incorporating intermittent fasting or time restricted eating. Because what happens during nutritional ketosis is the body starts using its own fat sources. So when you mentioned fat loss, weight loss, so that is why one of the areas where people get excited is there is no calorie counting. You are not counting how much, and there is no low calorie diet on this. You are just restricting your time, your eating window. So that is what gets someone into nutritional ketosis. Now, Anu, one of the things is when people hear the term ketosis, particularly a lot of doctors, they get scared because
it sounds something that is difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens is there is something called diabetic ketoacidosis. That is a very serious problem. Now, nutritional ketosis is not the same levels of ketones as diabetic ketoacidosis. I have heard doctors saying, oh, you should not fast because if you get into ketosis, it's like deadly. But the fact is, our hunter-gatherer ancestors did not eat all the time.
Right.
So our bodies are designed for this fuel switch, So, and at the same time, it is important not to, we are going to have more research now. It's probably not great to remain on nutritional ketosis forever. So the switching of fuels in the body is extremely important. Another question I get is, the brain needs glucose. Yes, the brain needs glucose, but that does not mean you have to eat the glucose.
Exactly.
Our bodies have the ability to make, glucose. But our body does not have the ability to make certain fats and a lot of proteins as well. So some proteins, some amino acids, and some fat like omega-3 fatty acids, these are called essential fatty acids. There are no essential carbohydrates. So I think I'm going to pause there because we've veered into intermittent fasting, but going back into how we would use, someone's genetic information. Some of the areas in functional medicine we use that is, and I know you have a pharmacogenomic report coming up. So that is one of the important ones, because what happens is every medication, so every prescription medication, hormones, then, all the plastics and all the environmental toxins, all of these are processed through the liver. So the liver is a major detoxification organ, and it is very undervalued. Like most of the time, you don't hear people talking about liver health. And fatty liver is, again, an epidemic. Fatty liver, unfortunately, is related to higher heart disease risk, higher dementia, higher everything. And unfortunately, even kids are getting fatty liver now. So
and
what happens?
Because of the diet that they are typically eating, or
it's actually not only diet. So food is a very important factor, because a lot of processed carbohydrates, things that become sugar. So things like burgers and pizzas and the stuff that, people eat at malls in the weekends, sugar
I want to
sweetened
highlight this comment so that my daughter listens to it as well. Yeah.
It is difficult, when they go with friends, like how can she be the only one who's
I
not
know.
eating what the
Yeah.
others are eating? I mean, that age, it's very important to conform to that. So I used to teach my patients, young patients with PCOS, and I said, okay, next time you go to the mall, your friends are going to order a burger. What are you going to do? So she said, oh, I don't. I said, no, order the burger, but maybe order 2 burgers and throw away the bun.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether in India you get lettuce burgers now. So in Canada, you can ask for a lettuce. The patty is wrapped in a lettuce and not the bun. So this is what I tell my patients: throw away the bun, but you are going to need 2 burgers then, because there's very little, this much of a patty in one. So eat good protein and good fat and reduce the carbs. So going back to the liver detoxification. So what happens is, and I'm sure your report comes up with the P450 pathway. So that so that particular pathway has a whole lot of genes. So we need a lot of enzymes to process a lot of stuff in our bodies. And every enzyme is coded by a gene. Now, if a certain gene has a minor variation, the SNPs we talked about, some of those can function better and some of them can function worse. So one of the things we do, and particularly if we have a patient who has a lot of chemical sensitivities, they'll come and say, I can't be in a room where someone's used perfumes. If my house is cleaned with, synthetic cleaners, I can't be in the house. So we start suspecting something like, and they want to be on hormone therapy as well. So those patients will say, okay, maybe you need to get a test to see what is going on, because let us say one particular pathway is, you have a genetic variation which makes that enzyme less efficient. Now that same less efficient pathway is also used by the hormones in your body. So your estrogen metabolism, and estrogen metabolism is related to risk for breast cancer in women, and it's also related to risk for prostate cancer in men, but that's in women, and estrogen is more significant. So let us say that same inefficient pathway is being used by your estrogen in your body. It is being used by some pharmaceutical medications, and it is also being used by a lot of hormone disrupting chemicals. So things like plastics, dioxins, bisphenol A, bisphenol S, all those wonderful plastic bottles that people carry around, and then it gets heated in the car and it's cooled in the refrigerator. If it's a man, I usually tell them, that is going to make you into a female because that gets their attention.
That's a good way. They definitely, I think, will.
Like rather than explaining, oh, EDCs are, these are hormone mimickers and they're going to get attached to your hormone receptors. Anyway, so hormone disrupting chemicals is actually a huge problem all over the world. And the Endocrine Society, the World Health Organization, they are looking at it. So throw away your plastic bottles, that's my simplest suggestion. So let us say that same inefficient enzymatic pathway is being used by all these dioxins and parabens and all this stuff. So what ends up happening is, maybe that is what places you at a higher risk for breast cancer. It may not necessarily be that you have breast cancer in your family, but you'll say, oh, someone will say, how did this happen to me? There's no breast cancer in my family. And why did I get it? So this could be one. I'm not saying this is the only explanation. Yeah. So the same inefficient pathway being, pushed into so many different ways, some way it has to give. So that is why it's important to reduce toxic exposure. And some of these liver detoxification pathways can also be helped by nutritional supplementation, things like broccoli extract, sulforaphanes, B vitamins, omega-3 fatty acids, a lot of stuff. So that is another area we look at. Another one I mentioned is the MTHFR. So MTHFR has commonly, there are many variations. The two that we look at are the most common ones. Those are relevant for fertility. So if someone has recurrent pregnancy loss, that is important to check in the mother particularly. Mental health challenges, because some people have a certain genetic variation where a regular B vitamin is not really going to help them. They have to take a methylated folate, methylated B vitamins. And most of the time, our patients will ask me, doctor, so how long should I take this? I said, how long do you think your genetic variation is going to be there?
Yeah.
So it's lifelong.
I remember, like, I had on my genetic report also, it showed the B vitamin deficiency. But now I'm okay. I think I have been, but I do supplement.
Yeah. Without supplementation, actually, there is no way out, because if you have a genetic variation, how is it going to change? And this is, whatever I'm saying is not like just from the top of my head. This is based on the research of a lot of people in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's, I realized that a lot of people don't even bother to look at some of these things. And even in my case, I remember this was discovered many years ago. And I think part of it was that I remember that I mean, they almost diagnosed it as carpal tunnel syndrome because I had a B12 deficiency. But I think, if I had my Genome or my report at that time, I would have figured it out that, it was probably a B12. Luckily, one of the doctors did diagnose it. And I think that's how we figured it out. But I think that's a common thing for a lot of people, that people don't necessarily look at, especially when you're younger, when you're in your 20s, maybe you're not even bothered to do a blood test or find out, or to do and I think this is a great way to help people understand. And I think if they can get direction from specialists like you to say, do you need a methylated, vitamin or something like that, I think that would really help people to understand and make those changes in their life as well.
Yeah. So Anu, again, one more thing, which is one of my pet peeves all the time, is when it comes to genomic information in the common database in the world. See, I'm like, this is a little off topic, but I think people of South Asian ancestry, I know people love donating money to charities and this and that, but I would say getting their own genomic testing done would be one of the best, charities in a way, if you want to call it that, to donate that information to the common database. Because what is happening is 23% of the world's population, so that's like 1.8 billion people, are of South Asian ancestry. So people from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. But in the genomic database, it's how much? Is it about 2% now?
Yes, less. It was much. It was 0.2%. Now it's increasing slightly.
It's increasing, yeah, thanks to some of the studies in the USA, on the masala trial and all that. So when I state these statistics, at some event when I speak here, people are like, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No, I'm not kidding.
Not, it is the truth." Yeah.
Yeah. So that is one area. If someone feels like I need to do something for my country, my whatever, for the community, I would suggest just do that. That would be like a big and most importantly, be agree to share your information with, so that it is used in research. So my pet peeve is we don't have a lot of research coming from India done on Indians, because it is difficult. It costs a lot of money, and there are so many other challenges. But we do need that research.
I think that's part of the reasons why we are doing this also, right? Because I think we realize that 1/6 of the population is Indian, and there's so little data. And I think that's why it took some time to be able to get to some of that. But now I think we've been able to use our own database to sort of make those predictions better, and allows us to be able to make it and hopefully contribute to the greater good of the Indian population in general.
Yeah.
I think, that was one thing I wanted to ask you. You mentioned the masala study and a few others, where we did see that there are some differences with the South Asian ancestry. So when you practice, do you find that is necessarily very different from, because you practice in Canada, I'm sure you get people who are Caucasians, you get people from many different ethnicities. So do you feel that from a genomics point of view that you find that the different kinds of risks are there especially for the South Asian population, or do you think it's about the same in all of them?
So from the point of genomics, now my sample size is not that big to tell you exactly, okay, these are the South Asians and these are the people of European ancestry and this is what we see in them. But what we look at more is what is the phenotype. So phenotype meaning what is showing physically. what is showing in terms of blood levels. So in those terms, like for example, most South Asians, and in South Asians, unfortunately, a lot of diseases start at least a decade earlier. So even something like young hypertension, India, it's very common and most of the time undiagnosed, because like you said, young people are not thinking of, I keep telling my patients, I said, you all think hypertension is a problem of your parents' generation, not yours, but it is, your blood pressure is not normal. Anyway, so those are things that we can see. So if someone has more belly fat, if someone has PCOS, if someone does not have diabetes yet, but doctor has told them your blood glucose levels are climbing. So we have a lower threshold for saying that this is not normal blood glucose levels. It is not 100 milligram per deciliter. You need to start taking action when it is around 90. 70 to 85 would be ideal, but that is not something I see in my Indian patients even in the younger ones. So then belly fat is another one. And you've seen that's so common. Then if someone has a lot of difficulty in maintaining body composition, they need to exercise a lot. That is another clue. High, levels of liver enzymes, SGOT, SGPT, having fatty liver, having primary hypertension, the common garden variety hypertension. Not all hypertension is related to this. These are clues for anyone, whether they are of European ancestry or South Asian ancestry, that your insulin carbohydrate metabolism is not optimal. But the interesting thing is, this is what you and I have been talking. Even if your genes say that this is going to be a problem for you, as you have proven it so beautifully in yourself, that you can change all of that by how you live your life. So yes, it's not like, oh, I don't know what is going to happen because I have this bad family history of heart disease and everything. No, there is a lot you can do. Start with where you are. Just start with some simple steps. You don't have to be, you don't have to be imprisoned by your genetic history. That is the most important point. And there, masala studies and all these have come up with a lot of information, but the information is not unique in the sense, these are things we suspected. Like insulin resistance, poor carbohydrate insulin metabolism starts much earlier in South Asians, even in children actually. So high insulin levels are commoner in younger kids. And that's why you talked about, I don't think I responded to that. You asked about fatty liver in children and whether it's the food. Food is one of the factors. Another one is sugar sweetened beverages. So all those, what in India are called cold drinks. So they have a lot of fructose as well. So fructose. So fructose is actually, a really deadly deadly substance, because it does not raise blood glucose, it does not raise insulin, but it goes to the liver and causes mayhem. So quite often, people are told when they have fatty liver, you need to give up alcohol. Yes, alcohol is important, but they're not told you need to give up your fruit juices and, all the sugar beverages. I find very often people think that when they are drinking fruit juice, that is a healthier choice than having alcohol. And again, alcohol, there are caveats. It's not like how much alcohol is safe. But a fruit juice or a sugar sweetened beverage is not a better option. The best option would be just water.
Yes, or a herbal tea or
yeah. So herbal tea, black coffee with some cream, no sugar, no sweetener. All those are wonderful. Or nimbu pani, the lemon, this thing, but without sugar.
Yeah, I think sugar is a big culprit. I think I how much ever I love sweets, being from Marwari, I think one of the things I cut from my diet has been sugar. So occasionally, I still indulge in, a dessert or the other, but most of the times, cut off carbohydrates, cut off a lot of the sugars. I think that helps quite significantly.
And did you feel that made a big difference to you?
Absolutely. I think I started off first, I think I remember this was with my brother, where he gave me some tea and I liked it. And I didn't realize there was no sugar in it. And after that, I think that was the last day I had tea with sugar. After that, I've never had that. That was 10 years ago. So I think it was more that I think sometimes we don't even try that alternative to be able to get to it. And even now, I think I don't eat I don't eat roti, I don't eat rice, except when my mom makes it and it's special and it's with, then it's different.
Yeah.
But otherwise I don't. I think the body gets used to it. And I don't think you don't crave it anymore unless you feel that you crave it. I think the body is much easier for you to be able to actually make those changes.
So Anu, we are not going into that because we'll run out of time.
Correct.
So yes, sugar is again sugar's addictive properties. Some people have food addictions, and it is so true that some of the Indian sweets are so tasty.
Yes.
Like you can't just eat one.
True. I think that's why we have to be careful about what. So I think when you were mentioning this whole discussion about genomics, lifestyle, and others, I think there was one thing that I remember when we first met one of our who's now our chairman of our board, Mr. Gopalakrishnan. He was talking about genompathy. He said one thing, and I think it was a nice analogy that he used. He said it is like being given a bank balance at birth, right? So you might inherit a lot of wealth at the beginning of your life, or you might not inherit a lot of wealth. Now it's up to you. You can sometimes completely get the whole wealth might completely go away, or you might actually build that up over a period of time. So I think when you're given a set of genes in your genetic lottery, a lot of the things that you can do would be in terms of how you yourself have been able to make those changes and therefore change the outcome or the overall bank balance at the end of your life, right? So anyway, I know that you have another engagement coming up, and it's been so much fun talking to you, and I know we can talk about brain health, we can talk about many other things. But is there anything that you would like to discuss before we call it a night or a day, depending on where we are?
So basically, yes, maybe we can have that for another session. So this is my newer interest is in aging clocks and brain fitness and health, because brain health is something we talk about a lot. And even, back when I was an OBGYN, of course, we never thought of the brain and the uterus and tubes connected to each other in any which way. Now we know different. So brain health, I decided that, 2022 is going to be the year of the brain, and I'm going to focus on brain health from now on. And aging clocks is another very interesting. That is where the epigenetics comes in. So maybe we're going to have that discussion another day. Bottom line is, the message I want everyone to get is, you are not a victim of your genetics. There is a lot you can do once you know what your genes are telling you. Don't feel hopeless. This is a message of hope. There is a lot you can do to just change your own, risk for things. And Anu is a absolute fantastic example. And likewise, I think if I did not do what I did, I would have had diabetes by now, because like any South Asian family, diabetes is so common in my family as well. And early premature heart disease. Like I have had cousins who had heart attacks in their 50s. So thank you very much, Anu. It was a wonderful talking to you.
Wonderful, always wonderful chatting with you, and I'm so glad and we are honored to have you on our show. And hopefully we'll do the next round on brain health.
Yeah, we will.
Fantastic.